as part of my Creating a Better Life series, I wanted to do a video on revisiting my high school years, all the things that happened then and the impact all of this had for my young self. And I actually did shoot the video, but for different reasons it didn't feel like the right thing to post it as it was and as I originally intended it. So this is an alternate version with the original footage of me on camera, but with a different voiceover. Who knows, I might upload the original video later on, but for now this is how I've chosen to do it. So the thing is, and you might have picked up on this from one of my other videos, that the process of creating a better, freer, more fulfilling life for myself has also meant that I have to confront and own up to stuff within myself, especially old stuff and coping mechanisms from the past. It's been a quite natural process, and the things that has needed to be looked at has come up in a light and gentle manner, however also very clear and obvious at the same time. And then recently, and honestly to my own surprise, I found that my high school years were knocking at my mental doors. But in many ways, it makes sense though. I mean, during the last 4 to 5 years, I've been working quite diligently on understanding and healing all the things that happened in the years following my mother's death and the consequences they have had on my inner world and how I relate to the outside world as well as other people. So with the trauma of my high school years resurfacing, I realized that I am actually working my way back through my past. And now, when the other stuff has been taken care of, at least enough for me to move on, I'm back to a very crucial time, and in many ways, the root events of all I've been struggling with in most of my adult life. I think many, if not most people, have traumas of various kind from their high school years. For many reasons, it's generally a vulnerable period in a person's life. I won't go as deep as originally intended into what happened during my high school years in this video, but I will highlight the key events and the impact I have finally come to realize that they had for me. And by doing this, I hope to not only make the connections and impacts clearer to myself and thus help push my own healing journey forward, I also hope that there might be something helpful in it for you, and at least to let you know that you are not alone in dealing with these issues if you were hurt too during this time of your life. And here I have to add that this video is purely for entertainment purposes, right? I'm not a trained professional, and I am not giving you advice on how to live your life or what to do in your specific situation. Your life is your own responsibility, and if you are in need of therapy or counseling, I encourage you to seek professional help. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get back to the video. So, as with so much other stuff, my high school years have to be put into a broader context in order to understand why these 3 years, from 1996 to 1999, had such a profound impact on my life and who I unconsciously chose to become. So most importantly, my mother had been diagnosed with breast cancer about 1.5 years before I started in high school, and she died a little over a month before my graduation in 1999. In addition to that, my grandfather was ill with cancer and died during the first year of high school. My grandmother was struck with grief and never really regained her former strength after my grandfather's death. And later on, she was also diagnosed with cancer, and she died 2 years after my mother. I was very, very close to my grandparents. I saw them almost every day, and they were in many ways almost like second parents to me. As for my father, our relationship was very strained during these years, and I remember him as not involved in my high school life, as well as the source of chaos, hurt, and shock in our family. And in his choices and actions at the time, I felt that he let us all down, especially my mother. And all of that created a very bad and tense atmosphere at home, in addition to the insecurities and worries connected to my mother's illness and deteriorating physical health. So as for my high school experience especially, it was overall signified by loss of confidence, identity issues, fear, and hiding. I came from a village primary and secondary school background, a small community with all the security and comfort that follows from that, such as everybody knowing everybody and the teachers taking care of us if there were issues and conflicts to be solved. On top of that, I was good at school and got good grades without putting in much effort. School stuff came easy to me and I enjoyed it. All of that changed in high school. I skipped a year in the school system to go to high school early. That's normal procedure here. All of my friends did too. But that had severe consequences for my educational performances. I fell several grades and received a lot of critique for my work. And putting in more effort didn't seem to do much difference. And that was a blow for my self-confidence and how I looked at myself. For example, I started to feel less than the others in my class who did well. The relation with the teachers was also different here. Not close, not confident. Maybe because it was a much bigger school with more students. Maybe because it was just the way it was in high school. I don't know. We had a special class teacher for each high school class. But ours didn't like me for some reason, and honestly, I wasn't that fond of her either. However, that lack of teacher support and connection, I think, had a negative impact for me due to the fact that over time, as my mother got worse, nobody talked to me about it. And it wasn't just the teachers. Hardly any of the grown-ups I had in my life at the time asked me how I was doing and what was going on at home. And everybody knew, of course. To be honest, I don't know if I had been able to talk about it or even wanted to talk about it. But I guess that the point is here that the fact that no one approached me or showed up for me, I subconsciously interpreted to mean that no one cared. And this probably wasn't correct. I guess people cared at some level, but most likely they all assumed that there was someone else closer or better suited who I could talk to and who would help me out. But the fact is that there wasn't. And I was very much left alone with all these issues, flanked by that subtle but growing feeling that no one really cared, and a feeling of being let down, I guess. Furthermore, there was the issue of my sexuality. At some level, I had always known that I was gay, but I was too afraid to admit it to myself and let alone others. It was a very homophobic environment back then, a classic small-town homophobia of the late 1990s. And I was very scared of being labeled, mocked, and socially excluded. In high school, the fear of being found out escalated and became very controlling and made me avoid attention at any level because of the fear that people would somehow notice and call me out. Combined with, normal teenage insecurity in terms of how you look, dress, talk, and so on, the issue of my sexuality exacerbated my feeling of being different from the others in a very negative way. So when I add all this up, the larger circumstances of my life, combined with my specific high school experience, it seems clear to me that my life actually collapsed at this point in time. First of all, I can see that my support systems at the outer level, my sense of safety, stability, comfort, but also warmth and love, eroded almost completely with the illness and death of my mother and my grandparents. Within 6 years, 3 out of the 4 most important adults in my life were gone. At an inner level, I know, and I now know that I lost my belief in myself. I lost my confidence, and other important identity aspects in my life were just a mess I didn't know how to deal with. Another important reaction to all of this was that I started to dim my light. I can see that I started to hide and avoid attracting any kind of attention during these years, mostly for the fear of being called out as a lesbian, but also out of concern of critique and just judgment in general. Overall, I can now see that I became very scared and vulnerable in these years, and how I lost a lot of my own inner power and strength. It was an erosion, you can say, that happened over time, and the full-on consequences have not been as clear to me as they are now when I take it all into perspective. But I understand now that this is where I started to come apart. I also know that what happened in those 3 years came to set the tone for the next 10 to 15 years of my life. Many of the issues even grew worse and were fortified over time, and I managed to shut myself down even further, becoming even more fearful and more insecure. So my high school days have been casting long shadows in my life, and that's why they're so important for me to look at and to understand and connect to the rest of my life and who I am today, or at least who I was up until recently. Because as part of trawling through my high school years, I've realized that I have to get back to who I was before all this happened, before disaster hit. And more importantly, I know that there is someone to get back to. She just got buried during all the emotional chaos, and I guess probably also as a way of protecting her. And I think she's been patiently waiting for me to get back and find her again, to unearth the young me I buried deep within over 20 years ago. As I say it in the original video. So actually, I mean, the main thing, I guess, is that all of this excavation into the past has made me realize that I want to and I need to come back to who I was before all of that happened. And I know she's still there because I can feel her. I can feel her, rising through the dirt of the past. And she's still intact. That's pretty awesome and pretty joyous to feel. So she's just, brushing off the dust and the dirt. But she's still golden under all of that, and she hasn't really been hurt or affected by it. She's just been locked up or dormant because I told her to. So this is where I am on my journey now, and where I'm heading from here, adding the dots in the rubbles of my high school years and going on an excavation beyond the very same rubbles to find an essential part of myself, because I know I need her and I want her as part of the better and more fulfilling life I have set out to create for myself. Before ending this video, it's important for me to underline that I'm not telling you this story in order to gain pity. I don't see myself as a victim, nor do I blame others for what happened. The point for me is to show how I work with these things, to understand what happened within me, how I interpreted the things that happened back then, and why I reacted the way I did, in order to identify and ultimately change and free myself from the long-lasting convictions and beliefs about myself and others, which have kept me from living the life I truly want and deserve. And by doing so, by sharing my steps, I hope it might be of some sort of help or inspiration for you too. Yeah, so let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching and take care.